Vikings have become super popular in recent years, with countless television shows and video game series being created to tell their story. Ubisoft has created games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla and reignited interest in Vikings in thousands of people around the world. Today, we'll be diving into the lives of 10 of the most famous Vikings to ever live. Before we get started, be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more videos. Rollo, 846 to 931. Rollo is a mysterious man. We don't really know where he came from. Some people claim that he's from Denmark, but others claim he's from Norway. Since there are so many conflicting reports, we don't know for sure. Rollo is first seen in history between 885 and 886. He's known for being one of the most incredible warriors of his time and helped rule over Frankish land. Historic records say that he was officially declared the leader of the Vikings in 918, and that he would reign over Normandy until 928. His son would follow in his footsteps and claimed his father's title a short while later. His children and followers would eventually become known as the Normans, with many people living in Ireland being able to trace their roots back to Rollo. He remained one of the pillars of the Norman people until he passed away in 931 at the age of 70. Rollo established such an amazing group of followers that they continued to rule Normandy for over 200 years. They were finally overthrown in 1204 when King Philip Augustus claimed the area. By all means, Rollo is one of the most fierce leaders in Viking history, and he will not soon be forgotten. Hacken I, 920 to 961. Hacken the Good was one of the youngest sons of Harald I. He grew up in his father's footsteps and gained control of Norway in the year 935. Just like Rollo, a lot of the information we have about Hacken can't be confirmed because it was passed down in stories, legends, and sagas over many years. It was difficult to keep track of history back then, and much of the Vikings' history has been lost to time. Many of the stories about Hacken conflict with each other, but it's believed that he was born and raised as a Christian. He spent much of his life in England and cemented his Christianity later in life. When his father passed away, Eric I became king. Hacken was put in charge of several ships and troops and was asked to help overthrow his brother. He promised his people that he would lift property taxes if they helped him, and this gained him hundreds of new followers. We believe that Eric fled to England a short time later, and his land was eventually given to Hacken's foster father. Hacken treated his people well, but he wanted to bring Christianity into the country. This caused many of his followers to turn on him. He eventually passed away while battling with his nephews, and he was buried as a pagan. Harald Hardrada, 910 to 987. Harald was born as the second son of Gorm the Old and Thyra Danebod, who came from the Jelling family. His father is believed to be one of the first original kings of Denmark, but as is true with much of Viking history, we don't know this for certain. After his father passed away, the kingdom was handed down to Harald. Harald was only able to take office after his brother was killed by an arrow. The first historical records we have from Harald came about 200 years after he passed away, meaning many of his stories were passed down by word of mouth and have likely been altered over time. The stories tell of how Harald was a very courageous ruler because he always took the time to relate with his followers and think things through before taking action. In one of the stories, passed down by Saxo Grammaticus, this idea is completely tossed away, and Harald is described as a hateful ruler that would go so far as to wage war against his own children. After Hacken the Good passed away, Harald was pronounced King of Norway. He helped to unify Denmark for the first time in its history. When he eventually died, his son took rule over the country. Swain Gablebart. Back in 986, Swain Gablebart, also known as Swain Gablebart, was officially declared the King of Denmark. He would take part in the first invasion of England about 3 years later, and would work alongside Olav Trigvasan to lead an attack on London in the year 994. He was so feared by his enemies that he was given 16,000 pounds of silver after he led the attack on London. This was to help keep the peace and keep his army at bay. His accomplice Olav was the King of Norway at the time. Sadly, Olav was killed in battle sometime in the year 1000. This helped Swain gain control of Norway as well. Swain would lead several invasions in England, but most of these would fail, and his team would be forced to retreat and regroup. Finally, in the year 1013, he would lead the first successful invasion and overthrow certain areas of England. This helped Swain remain the ruler of England for the rest of his life, but he wouldn't last too much longer. Just 3 days before he was due to be crowned king, he would pass away. He was then brought back home to Denmark to be buried. Olav Trigvasan. As expected, the life of Olav Trigvasan is mostly unknown. We know that he led a Viking army in the year 991 while trying to overthrow England alongside Swain Gablebart. When this invasion failed, he was sent back to his homeland while he regrouped with Swain to plan a future attack. In a strange turn of events, England appealed to both Olav and Swain and offered 16,000 pounds of silver to keep them away. When Olav returned home after the unsuccessful invasion, he was baptized in his faith. He took this time to Christianize the country of Norway and built several churches. He went so far as to make Christianity the official religion of Norway, though this wasn't appreciated by everyone. He would continue his reign and bring the country to peace throughout the following years, and help make amends with Iceland as well. In a shocking turn of events, Olav would lose his life in battle on September 9th, 1000. His kingdom quickly began to fall apart when it was taken over by Swain Gablebart after his death. It would be another 13 years before Swain would overthrow England without Olav's assistance. Olaf Haraldson, 995 to 1030. The memory of Olaf Haraldson is still celebrated each year on July 10th and 29th. This proves just how valuable he was to the Vikings of his time. Many people claim Olav was born in 995, but this is unlikely, as we know he was part of a Viking mission as early as 1007, when he led a ship's crew and became known as Sea King. Less than 2 years later, he would march to England as a member of the Viking army and helped lead a battle against Canterbury. The mission was eventually called off, but he would continue leading raids in both France and Spain. His efforts were so vicious that he scared away the King of England, causing him and his wife to flee to France for a while. When the king returned, Olaf retreated to Norway and fought several battles alongside Danish King Knut. At the time, Christianity had become extremely popular in Norway. Olaf would continue spreading Christianity throughout the country, and rumors claim that Olaf was so dedicated to his religion that he would only allow people who had been baptized to enter his army. This meant that most people in the country were willing to accept Christianity as their faith, as they all wanted to take part in the raids that Olav would eventually lead. Just a few years later, Knut was crowned as the King of England. Olav and Knut did not get along, and Knut would later begin a raid on Norway. As the country had already begun to fall apart, Knut's raid was successful and Olav was overthrown. When he attempted to recapture the country in 1030, he lost both the battle and his life. He is remembered as a saint by many people in Norway. Knut the Great, or Knut. Knut II the Great, often known as Knut in English, was the son of Swain Gablebart. In his later years, he was expected to become the ruler of an empire that would unite England, Denmark, Norway, and southern Sweden. He was a devoted member of the Anglo-Saxon Church and would spread the word of this religion after his father raised him in the church. He planned on starting a local branch of the church in England, similar to the church that had already been founded in Denmark. When his father passed away, Knut retreated to Denmark after the council refused to crown him as king. He spent the next few years planning ways to take over England and was crowned King of England on Christmas Day. His brother passed away a short time later, placing Knut as King of Denmark as well. He worked hard to protect both countries from enemy forces, but he wouldn't be successful. He was able to stand his ground in Norway, but lost a battle against Scotland. He passed away in 1034 and was buried in Winchester. Harald Hardrada. Harald was the half-brother of Olav the Holy. He was forced to flee Norway when he was just 15 years old, after he participated in a battle that claimed his brother's life. He would eventually settle in the Russian city of Novgorod and would work alongside Grand Duke Yaroslav I before serving 4 emperors of the Byzantine Empire. By 1042, he married the daughter of the Russian Grand Duke. It didn't take him long before he returned to Norway and accepted a proposal from Magnus I to divide the rule of the country. When he passed away in 1047, this made him the sole ruler. He was despised by many in his faith because he hired bishops to the church who had not yet been ordained. This was only a minor setback, though. He would remain in power until he lost his life in 1066 during the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Eric the Red. Eric the Red is most well known for founding the Viking settlements in Greenland. He's known for being extremely aggressive and violent toward his people and his enemies, and made a name for himself as one of the most fearsome rulers to ever live. His nickname wasn't only given because of his red hair, but also for the blood he spilled. When he was 20 years old, his family fled to Iceland after his father had committed a crime. He eventually headed west and would explore various areas in search of a new settlement. He gathered a group of researchers and found land, with him later returning to his homeland to gather recruits to help build a new settlement on the land. Over half of the ships and crew would be lost at sea, never to be seen again. By 1002, some of the people who helped to set up this new settlement became ill from a plague. This disease was given to Eric as well, as he passed away a short time later. He had several children before his death, one of whom was Leif Eriksen, one of the most well-known Vikings to ever live. Leif Eriksen. We believe Leif Eriksen was born in Norway and moved to Greenland a short time later. He returned to his homeland in Norway around 999 and converted to Christianity. A short while later, he would sail west to find land and would dock his ship in North America. He claimed land here and named the areas Helluland, Markland, and Vinland. We don't know for sure where these areas are located today, as this information has been lost to time. Leif would eventually settle in Vinland, which was known for its wine. As far as we know, he was the first Viking to ever claim land in North America. He would return home to Greenland a short time later and would bring along several people to move into the new settlements in America. But these settlements would not last the test of time, and they all faded into obscurity very quickly. Let us know, of all these amazing Vikings, which would you most like to sit down and share a coffee with? The stories they could share would be completely amazing. Let us know in the comments, and also let us know what you would do if you were a Viking for a day. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to hit that like button and ring the notification bell for more videos.